Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of NOS4A2. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down, so let's break it down. First and foremost, obviously we had that whole scene at the beginning with Christmas Land and everything, and I thought it was interesting because I guess Vic always, because anytime she went to near Slay House all that time ago, when she got this sleigh house, she would kind of hear it around those ornaments in the trees and stuff like that. So I guess it's a thing of there's a thin layer separating obviously the world between reality and thought. So Vic, it's there, but obviously she, once again, it's hidden away by anyone except for Charlie, specifically his wraith. Without the wraith, you can't get in, obviously. So it's has it always been there, or is it just because of or is it just in that moment because of the boundary slipping, it just happens to pop in there? Or is that always where it's been? I'm curious how that 100% works. Because I'm sure anytime with the Wraith takes you basically there's a roundabout path to get there. There's a path to get there, but that was the layer between the worlds thinning. And one of the boys Millie ended up pushing him out. And it seems they're very cannibalistic there, because they were playing a game where they were basically going to eat him, but they stopped just because of everything that was going down. Because Christmas Land, I keep thinking in my head, am I saying Christmas Town every time I say it? I think I might have said Christmas Town before, or because anytime I'm saying Christmas Land, I want to say Christmas Town, just because damn it, Nightmare Before Christmas kind of screwed that up in my head. Regardless, Christmas Land, trying to make sure I make sure I'm definitely saying that. It's falling apart and dying, and so I was I thought that was kind of interesting. But the boy she pushed out was chasing the others, but then he ended up turning into static and disappearing. So I'm I guess when they leave, unless you can't leave the boundaries of Christmas Land, the moment you're there, you're kind of there forever, and if you leave there, you die. Or was it just because Christmas Land was dying, and because he left its protection? So he kind of, I'm curious how that worked, because it didn't seem like he popped back up either. It's just no, he died. Oh, but also finishing the thought I was saying before too, I wonder, do they do the whole cannibalistic thing? Is it just for fun? Was that the first time, or have they done it the entire time? Because it turns out it's been 8 years since season 1, more like 7.5 basically. But no, I think it's just a full-blown 8 years. Regardless, the fact of the matter is, they probably have been starving the entire time. So I'm wondering, have they been eating each other just to survive type of situation, or once again, it's just kind of their twisted game. But that's an interesting aspect to this. I should also note, I think that's kind of fascinating. It's something I don't remember if I brought this up during season 1, but that definitely, having rewatched it, I definitely noticed it. Basically, the first season of the show takes place in 2012. They don't ever expressly say that, but you have to use context clues, because Vic's birthday is 1994. She's 18, so it'd be 2012. So meaning it's been 8 years. It's literally 2020. So they set this season of the show is technically present day. I guess they did that because I think the book, once again, I'm not that well versed in the book. I've read tiny bits about the book, but not enough detail. So I think there's a little bit of time skipping around in the book, so maybe that's why it's a little reflective in that regard. Either way, because they would have had to set the show in 2028 if they had set the first season present day. Regardless, tangents and all that. Vic has had her son Wayne. Also, she's super tatted up now, and her and Lou are a thing. I was what? That's super dope. I was holy shit! I didn't expect that to become a thing. Which I think is kind of, I guess that's supposed to also be the irony behind it, just because it's remember all that shit Charlie was talking to Lou at the end of the season and stuff like that. So that's why I'm I think that's kind of not necessarily the irony behind it, but it's supposed to be just kind of a middle finger to Charlie, because things ended up happening, and obviously Wayne kind of thinks of Lou as his dad. I was but then a part of him, he's oh, does he know about Craig? But we find out later on he does know about Craig. Obviously Vic would tell him. She probably just didn't tell him all the details, but we also know that Maggie and the detective, was it Turret? Hurrit? Well, it looks like she's in the FBI now. I don't remember if I brought that up during season 1. I felt I might have, but if I didn't, now rewatching season 1, you can definitely tell there's hints between her, like hints of like her and Maggie, like there being something there. Like it's a lot more apparent like this time. Like there's at least hints of it, but it's like, oh, they're a couple and everything, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But obviously, like Vic has kind of like cut all ties with Haverhill since she left, because it's like, oh, like Vic only calls usually when it's trouble, and she said, yeah, she must be shaken because like they end up finding out like Charlie died, so it's like, okay, like obviously it's giving Vic a lot of flashes, just like being haunted by him, and so she's calling up Maggie because she wants Maggie to use her tiles, but she's like, I don't do that anymore, which is interesting because like Maggie obviously she tried to quit the tiles, they found their way back to her, which is so interesting because like her girlfriend, well, I'm assuming I would say her girlfriend wanted her to use her tiles to find Bing, but I guess they never were able to because he's still like on the loose, and we'll get to that soon enough. But I just thought that was such an interesting aspect of like she doesn't want to use the tiles anymore, and it's like the fact of the matter is she calls every so often about this whole thing, about her knife, because she needs to find in that 8 years she never found a new knife, which goes against my theory, because I thought like the theory was going to be like the bike that was going to become her new knife. I thought it was going to be Craig's. That was my whole thought. Turned out not to be the case. It's fine. I just thought because like it being Craig's bike, it would have significance. I thought that's what would kind of change it into becoming her new knife. But regardless, so that's interesting. So that means in the end, we still don't 100% know how knives work. Vic kind of ends up bringing up the fact is that she kind of says that she feels like she kind of brought it into existence. I mean, much like your Inscape kind of works in that regard, you breaking the reality between reality and thought and kind of manifesting it in reality. Maybe the same thing kind of works in a knife, like you will it into existence and a certain thing becomes your knife. Maybe that's kind of my thought process. What I think is the saddest thing is that Vic has kind of picked up her dad's bad habit, because it seems like she drinks, and even Lou brings up the fact of the matter, it's like every Christmas she drinks a lot. Obviously it's just like the music, candy canes, all that. She was like, she was clear at the end of season 1, like, yeah, none of that, because of that time just reminds her just him, and like she basically has PTSD much like her dad. So, and part of you is like, it's kind of sad because you see like, oh, it's like that cycle, it's in their family. It's almost like, I mean, because alcoholism can be it can be hereditary, right? Because like if you're, I think it can be. I mean, once again, I'm an idiot when it comes to that stuff, but it's like her dad being an alcoholic means she's more likely to be an alcoholic, genetically and stuff like that. Might just, be predisposed to it, but also it's just like, that was his way. She grew up with that being his way of dealing with stuff, so it's like it kind of transferred to her, dealing with it in her own right the same way, I don't know. It's kind of sad, and obviously she tries to use the Lou's truck to open her bridge, but she can't. But then she gets the call about the Triumph, and it's like, oh, like Sam hit her up to be like, oh yeah, I told Lou about this bike and everything, and it's just like, oh, here it is, and it's like, wait, and it's just the moment she touches it, she feels it. It's like, oh, I know this will be it. This will be my my new knife. And so it turns into a whole conversation, because like even Lou had brought this up about like the fact of the matter is, it's like he wants to kind of make it official and legal, kind of making it like, based on the conversation, I'm assuming making Wayne officially his, like kind of being like, oh, like Wayne's my son, like legally on paper, So, but obviously, Vic gets so wrapped up in, fixing a bike and everything. She was supposed to pick up Wayne, but she got so engrossed in fixing a bike, because this has become her obsession, because that sad thing is she's bottling so much up. So it's like, in this, and I think that's, I mean, because I think the title of this episode is called Bad Mother, and it's so interesting because it's like, it's almost like I said, the cycle's repeating, because you see elements of her dad there, you see elements of her mom there, kind of all wrapped up in her. So like, their complicated disposition has kind of become hers to a certain extent. Different circumstances, yet similar, because once again, it's like her circumstances were, like her dad's circumstances were created because of PTSD, very much like her own, like everything with Charlie. So for her, it's like she doesn't believe Charlie's dead. Everyone else is telling her, like literal medical examiners have looked at him and stuff. And even I was like, after 8 years, he's dead. But to be fair, I'm like, well, to be fair, he is technically a super old dude. And I was like, but we see later on that we saw someone had been repairing the Wraith, but apparently someone had broken it apart. Like some artist dude was using it as like a thing, like kind of a display, and he had taken the engine out and put flowers in it, and then Bing shows up, and it's just like, oh man, it's like they managed to make, Bing was already creepy, they managed to make him even creepier this season. So it's just like, huh. So it makes you wonder, has he 100, like I don't think he can really finish Charlie's work, because he doesn't have access to Christmas Land. He's just still on the run. They haven't been able to find him for the past 8 years. But what was also interesting, we learned, is that Maggie ended up, she's like, all right, she like gets her tiles, and she calls an ambulance ahead of time. She's like, yeah, there's a librarian, the cute, adorable one. Yeah, like she's in the basement, like I think something happened to her, and it's like, I'm like, oh, why are you prepping them? I'm like, does your bag do something to you now? And she does it, and it seems like it's okay, because at first it's like, oh, is Charlie dead? And it's like, yes. And then she has a seizure. I'm like, shit. Is it like a byproduct of, like, once again, we know each gift comes with the cross price, and I guess like the more and more and more she uses it, the steeper and steeper that price has become. So to the point, it's not just I guess the stutter itself was like the beginning, and then the more you use it, the more power, I guess, like maybe the more powerful the thing she's asking her tiles, maybe the bigger strain it puts on her, whatever the case may be. Now it seems, and I wonder, has she told Vic that? She probably hasn't, just because she doesn't want Vic to worry, because she wants to probably do whatever she can to help Vic ease Vic's mind, knowing that this whole thing, it's like, because she wants Vic to just be able to move on with her life. Lou wants the same thing as well, but for Vic, it's not that easy. Just like Charlie still haunts her, and so she spends time with her son to kind of make up for, like, some, and it's like, oh, here's ice cream and stuff, and you're having fun and stuff. And once again, a little bit of, like, the cycle repeating, because what did her dad do? Anytime there was issues at home, he tried to, like, almost like brush it under the rug type of situation. It's kind of same thing for her mom. So it's like, it's even sadder and just heartbreaking. It was like, it's a very, like, holy shit. Like, yes, there's the supernatural aspect to the episode, but it's also just like, man, this is a very, like, that's a real, like, messed up home life type of situation. I mean, obviously we know the home life she came from, the complicatedness that was, and even in, so it's sad to see, once again, is that thing of, like, you don't ever want, like, in some, kids, no kid wants ever kind of, in some regards, feel like they don't want to grow up to be their parents, and it almost seems like she ran straight head first into becoming her parents to a certain extent. It's just, like I said, it's just an interesting thing from, like, a psychological standpoint. But when it was all said and done, like, she kept hearing the phones ring, which before that, I had brought up earlier, like, her son is like, oh, Charlie, who was he? Was he a bad guy? Like, I saw your face. She's like, oh, you're pretty smart. She's like, yeah, he was a bad guy. He took some children. She's like, did he take you? And it's like, and someone that I loved. And it's like, he's like, my dad? And it's like, lose your dad. He's like, yeah, I know, but my other dad, my biological dad. And she's like, yeah, his name was Craig. And so, did he kill him? And so he's like, I'm going to make sure that something like that never happens to you. But then she starts hearing the phones ringing, and she's like cutting the wires to the phone. She throws her phone in the oven. She throws her son's phone in the oven, and she's scaring the shit out of him. And she hears the ringing again, and it's like, open the door, and then she bashed down his door. Once again, and she's scaring the crap out of him, grabs the like little toy phone, answer it, and Millie's like, what are you doing to Christmas Land? She's like, oh, like, Charlie, I'm coming after him, and yada yada yada, and ends up throwing it in the oven. And then she immediately takes off on her bike, and I was like, oh, my mind immediately was like, you left your son there alone. I didn't even think about the oven thing. It's just like, you left your son there alone. I was like, oh, that's not going to be good. The moment I saw that, was like, right, the episode title is called Bad Mother. I was like, oh man, that sucks. But she drives on the bike and she opens up a bridge. Now, to me, this is a very interesting thing because it did something it's never done before. She went inside of a place with her bridge. Her bridge took her inside of inside of the morgue. I thought that was so interesting. Her bridge always took her to places, sure, but it was always on the outside. This is the first time she's ever been inside of somewhere because of her bridge. Her bridge literally took her inside of a building. I was like, holy shit, that's a very important detail right there that, like, I was like, huh. It never crossed my mind to think she could do that, you know? So the fact that they've set that up too is just like, the applications of that is crazy. But also the fact that she's got her bridge back. But she goes to the morgue and she sees Charlie's body and she stabs him with a scalpel. She feels happy about it because it's just like, because she might not be able to kill him, but she needed to know that he was dead to kind of have some peace of mind. By the time she comes back, I thought it was going to be a thing of, man, Lou's going to be waiting for you. It's like, wait, you left your son alone. It's worse. The house is on fire. Obviously, they stay in like a motel or whatever. And she's like, I'm sorry. He's like, what are you sorry for? And it's just kind of like the fact is you telling me that you're okay when you're not. Instead of saying these one-liners, instead of telling me whether you love me or hate me. And it's just like, and I thought it was such an interesting thing because Vic's like, basically for her, it's like her bridge. She's like fighting Charlie so much when she was younger and using her bridge so much. She's like, it took its toll on me, and like she thinks like basically she might be broken and she can't be put back together. And I think that's such an interesting thing. Little detail, like maybe I didn't look for it, but her eye wasn't bleeding. I thought that was interesting. Like, I didn't, because I feel like they would have taken more notice of that. They would have made it more of a point to it like they did the first season, but I don't know. I didn't notice it at all. So, but like I said, maybe if I go back, I would have noticed it. I didn't. They didn't make note of it. So, not unless I missed something. But it's like, so I'm wondering, is that supposed to represent her growth, or is it just because now it's going to the point, like her eye bleeding might have been a sign of like, yeah. I'm also curious, like, what does that mean about her original knife? I guess it's not. I guess the moment Charlie threw it in there last season, it got like, cause she, I mean, I guess now that she has a new knife, like it's almost like it like that bike broke apart and disappeared into the ether that is her Inscape, and then became this new Triumph, the bike she's got. But I just thought it was fascinating because once again, like that Inscape is supposed to be a manifestation of her mind. So remember what Charlie said, don't let, if all the bats ever leave, well, he's like, you understand the metaphor. And I'm like, that kind of fits with what she talks about. Because like every time she used her bridge, some of the bats would fly out. So her mental condition gets worse and worse every time. So it's like, it's very befitting for her to say like she is kind of a little messed up. And Lou's like, no, like you can be put back together. The fact of the matter is we got to you have to get some serious therapy and some help. And she's like, we can't afford that. He's like, I'll sell the bike. She's like, you love the bikes. And he was like, but I love you more. Like no competition. I was like, oh, that's super sweet. But sadly, when it was all said and done, though, she ends up, still drinking because she raids the minibar and then leaves, and her son catches her. And because that was another thing, he was like, you got drunk in front of our son and everything. It's just like, like I said, it's just sadly history repeating. And it's like, he's like, you're going to go, is it because you're leaving because of Charlie? She's like, no, I'm leaving because of me. Because for her, she feels like, as she feels like, oh, I'm a bad mother. I can't be around you in the way I am now. Like you and your dad will be better off without me. And he's like, oh, Dad, take your coat. Dad said it's like your armor, it'll protect you. And so we see her driving, and it says the lake, which you're like, you don't think she's gonna like kill herself, do you? Because it says the lake, so not unless this is like her going. Because I feel like it would have been like Haverville or home if that were the case, like if she was going, but like part of me wonders, is it the lake where her bridge first popped up and stuff like that? Like, is that where that is? Like, I'm curious to see. And obviously Bing ends up getting, manipulating that artist to put the engine back into the car. And in that moment, Charlie's heart starts beating and Christmas Land lights up again. Because if things had stayed the way they had, all those kids would have died. Who knows? Once again, who knows if there's any reversing any of that? There might not be. Like, they're probably, the way they are now is probably what they'll forever be. But at the very least, Charlie is alive again because of Bing. So, I mean, once again, it's like we had already set that up because the car was kind of being brought back to life the last episode. I'm sure the engine being taken out was literally like his heart being taken out. But it's like, this sets up a very interesting thing. Like, obviously, the struggles that, Vic has to go through. And I'm curious to see, what that looks like, this whole Wayne and Lou situation. Obviously, this Charlie thing. Being what obviously finding his way back to Charlie. Probably I feel like this season we'll probably get more insight into Christmas Land. I'm curious to see, because we met some last season, but I'm curious if we're going to meet any more. Like, what was it? What's the name of the episode? I think it's episode 8. What was it? Paranesis? Was it that the name of it? The people Charlie ran into that bar, because I think it was like a bar of other strong creatives. So it's like, you'll meet any of them, other ones in particular. Many questions. I'm very, very curious to ultimately see what this season has in store for us, but in particular what the next episode has in store for us. Sorry. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good